Job was one who definitely had some challenges. Job was faced with great things, we know, in the first couple chapters. We know his friends were no help. And then, Job seemed to struggle with some self-righteousness and almost demanding, that God make it right with what he's gone through. But throughout all of the discourse of Job, there are some things that are said that are true and that are good. And Job makes a point, or something Job says is really good. And that is in Job chapter 31 in verse 1. Job 31 verse 1. Listen to what he says. He says in here, I have made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? Or that I would not lust after a young woman. Job here is, yes, defending his righteousness. Job is trying to defend his character. I don't think Job was probably a perfect man, but he was a good man, a just man, a righteous man. But one of the things he says that he really worked on, that he was diligent about, is that covenant. He calls it a covenant with my eyes. To not lust, to not use his life, his eyes. Really, what it's about is using his heart. Job made it a point that he was not going to lust, which is a sin in the eyes of God. Lust is a sin in the eyes of God. We know that even Jesus said that when a man lusts after a woman, and even vice versa, when a man or a woman lusts after someone in their heart, and they are already committing sin in their hearts. It's like they are already committing adultery. We know that lust, whether that is sexual lust, whether that is the lust of covetousness even. So whether we're talking about sexual lust or the desires for what someone else has, Job says that I'm making it a point, I am resolved to make a covenant that I will not sin with my eyes. I will not sin with my mind, with my heart. Because he actually goes on, if you read a few verses, kind of continuing, Job basically says, because I know that God's going to punish those who do wickedly. Job says, I know that it's not okay for me to lust after a woman because I'm going to answer to God for that. And that's not okay. Lusting is not okay with God. So what this reminds me, what it should remind all of us is, am I making a covenant with my eyes to not lust? To not lust after people around me, or especially nowadays with pornography that is so readily available everywhere. Are we making a resolve as men and women to be pure in heart, pure in mind, making a covenant with our eyes, making a covenant with our ears, with our mouth? Really, what it's about is making a covenant with our heart, that I'm going to give my heart to God. I'm not going to go after the lusts and the pleasures of sin, of this flesh. But that's going to take a determination on our part. To say like Job, I have made a covenant with my eyes. I've made a resolve, a determination that I am not going to sin. Because it's going to take resolve and a lot of grace from God. But God will help us. What did Paul say in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13? That there's no new temptations, there's no new sins, and that God will help us through it. He will make the way of escape. God gives us that through His Word, through His power, through prayer, through His Spirit. But we've got to want it. We have got to resolve that I will not sin with my mind, with my heart, with my life. As Christians, we have made a covenant. We are in a covenant relationship with God. And being in that covenant relationship with God, I've got to determine that I am not going to sin in any form or fashion. Paul said to abstain from evil, cling to what is good, to abhor all forms of evil. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Abstain from all forms of evil and ungodliness. But that's going to be a determination on our part. I've got to determine I'm not going to look at things that I shouldn't be looking at. I'm not going to continue in things, and I'm not going to, whether it's lust, whether it's covetousness, whether it's lying, whether it's foul language, whether it's, fill in the blank, any sin. We've got to determine to be faithful to God in our covenant with Him. So make a covenant with your eyes, make a covenant with your heart, and let's be faithful to God. God bless.